productive meeting with allies, Biden said after a NATO summit, with America back at the table, he said after the meeting of the G7 industrial nations, reaching agreements in a separate summit with Russia's Vladimir Putin for future talks on arms control and cybersecurity. Biden accomplished his main goal, says one analyst, to strengthen the transatlantic alliance to address challenges.
From COVID to technology to regulation to security issues to managing the rising threat of China and Russia. I think the administration set out on some pretty broad objectives. First and foremost, to repair the damage that was wrought by the previous administration. I think they achieved that.
Biden reasserting partnerships and dealing with adversaries.
He certainly restored a workmanlike spirit to the alliance and had a good NATO summit. He certainly had a realistic summit with Vladimir Putin.
On the table in the discussions, Russian aggression against its neighbors and the plight of Putin critic Alexei Navalny, the opposition leader in a Russian prison. The U.S. and its allies want to engage with Russia, says analyst Simakovsky, where it is possible.
But also highlighting that additional Russian aggression is going to spur costs from the United States and from the NATO alliance. And President Biden was very clear that both on cyber, on destabilizing Russian actions in Ukraine, on potentially the opposition in Russia, Navalny, if he dies in prison, unfortunately, those will all raise a U.S. response.
The G7 criticized China for human rights abuses and Russia for cyber attacks and the use of chemical weapons. Biden said Russia and China will not succeed in dividing the allies. O'Hanlon says the allies wrestled with difficult trade issues, ending a long standoff over aircraft subsidies. But he adds more progress is needed.
The disagreements are still there, and there are a number that Biden could not or did not solve on this trip, including travel in the time of COVID. That's one outstanding issue where we haven't yet reached agreement. There are some other specific trade matters where there's still debates over subsidies and openness and fairness.
The G7 pledged more action on climate change, though not enough to satisfy critics, and promised 1 billion doses of COVID vaccines to lower-income countries. The analysts agree that for Biden, the trip was productive.
For the first trip as U.S. president, it's going to be historically seen as a good starting point for his foreign policy ambitions.
Missing from the talks, says analyst O'Hanlon, were broader discussions on the future of NATO, which has grown from 12 to 30 members. But he adds the meetings did reflect a growing consensus on dealing with a belligerent Russia and a rising challenger, China. Mike O'Sullivan, VOA News.